SouthCoast Swish.
You are either all the way in or you are all the way out. And there is no in between.
Hey, Hoops fans, we're talking top 10s with a GOAT on the show this week. One you ought to know if you've been paying attention to any NBA or WNBA action over the last, 28 years. I'm your host, Dodson, Chris Dodson, here with NBATV's, and that's not it, but Beau Estes. Beau, appreciate your time. Welcome to the show.
Pleasure being on with you, Dodson. It does make me sound old when I hear that I've been doing this long, and I can see my hair's gray now. So yeah, I've been around the block a little bit with this league. But thank you so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
Hey, if I get that dig in early, the rest of it goes great, right?
Yeah, we can only go up from there, right?
Right. But before we get too deep into this, could you just tell the people, how they can follow along with everything else you do, from social media to the SBC program? I know you're close to 10,000 follows on Twitter.
Oh, yeah. So just go to NBA BEAU at NBA BEAU on Twitter. And that's sort of where I post anything and everything that I'm doing right now. My job these days is to I work for Turner Sports, call the NBA highlights, call the WNBA highlights, whatever NCAA highlights we get in, and a few other things here and there. I have been host on NBATV for a number of years. I've hosted the Braves on TBS. There's a lot. There's a lot. It takes time to get all the stuff that I've done. And that's what this long road's about. It really is.
Right. There's almost too much to list. Everybody in my circle, I met you at the SBC program, obviously. Been listening to you for years, but no one seems to have more fun making these play calls and producing the top 10s. SouthCoast Swish edition, we got to start with your origin story of how and when did you fall in love with the game? Was it with the ball in your hands, or were you watching a Hall of Famer and he just, took your breath away?
So I live in Los Angeles now. Most of my life, I lived back east in Atlanta, Georgia. But when I was a kid, I lived here in Southern California too. And when I was a kid, a player named Magic Johnson came along, and he was a rookie. And that's my first memory of an NBA championship. Folks are seeing it now on that show, Winning Time. I remember it as a little kid. And I told my parents when I was very young, I mean, very young, that I wanted to be a sportscaster. And I never, ever diverted from that. I literally didn't need a guidance counselor in high school, didn't need any of that in college. I went straight to the newspaper. I was the sports editor in high school. I wrote sports articles when I was in high school. I had a little Radio Shack microphone and a camera, and I was calling the local Gwinnett County high school football games, and they would put them on Gwinnett Cablevision. And so I would do that with a buddy. I was calling games on radio, like a little country radio station outside of Atlanta for local high school games. I mean, I was getting experience from the get-go. My start with the game of basketball and broadcasting was young, but Magic Johnson, certainly the player that made me fall in love with the NBA.
Right. So you would say that's like the first player that just made you stop what you were doing and just watch, both as a young fan, but then maybe is there anybody that's done that as a commentator, since you've been in this game?
What's funny is people probably won't remember this guy, but there was a guy on ESPN when he's probably the most successful ESPN host there's ever been. His name's Craig Kilborn. Craig Kilborn went on to host the Late Show right after David Letterman. And Craig Kilborn's style was amazing. And for a generation of us, there was a moment in time where he was the star. He was the absolute star. He left sportscasting because he was just too big for it. Like guys like Rich Eisen, they're still in sports and everything like that. Craig became like a James Corden, like a David Letterman, like a Stephen Colbert. And then he just retired out of the blue. I was lucky enough to meet him and hang out at his house with him and everything like that. But that was a guy that I really looked to when I was young and said, what he's doing, I really enjoy because it's entertaining. That's what it was. It was entertainment.
Right. No, I grew up with Craig too, and no disparagement to someone like Keith Olbermann, who tried to also make that sort of jump out of sports. But, he was just that good that he could do that, retire, and he's, still seen as one of the greatest to ever do it, no matter what you're doing behind the mic. Yeah, he was
He's
definitely a big
living he's living a rich life out here in Southern California right now. Craig's doing really well. He's a happy dude.
right. I hope everybody's out there with the fires. We've got storms coming this way, but you grew up. You grew up a few storms when you start rhyming and riffing. I assume the top 10 calls are at the top of the list when it comes to the most enjoyable parts of the job. But that's not the only hat you wear. We've been over that. People can find your voice on WNBA games, but you're having fun with it. Where does that inspiration, that motivation? I mean, these are things that you have to script. This is just something coming from your heart.
Yeah, it really does. I think what's funny is when I was in college, my college senior thesis was how does a sportscaster inject his personality into his broadcast? So I was interested in that sort of topic as a young guy. I wanted to see how that would work, how I could make it work. And one of the things that I discovered in researching that paper that became true in my career is you have to develop credibility first. You have to be able to get the facts right. And if people have confidence that you're going to get everything right, then you can sort of take them on that entertaining journey. But it all starts with that strong foundation of getting things right. So I am hyper vigilant, I think our producers would say, about getting every detail right. I want to make sure the pronunciations are right. I want to make sure the scores are right. I want to make sure the stats are right. I want to make sure all the stakes are right. Everything like that. And then I feel very comfortable to have some fun with it. And you're right. It is my personality. If you love the top 10, then that's my personality. If you hate the top 10, then that's my fault because that's what I'm doing, man. At the end of the night, the top 10 is a little different than every other highlight. I have way more fun with it, but I can tell you the NBA likes what I do. I feel like fans like what I do. So if they didn't, I wouldn't be here right now, frankly.
Right. No, the fans love what you do. I've seen previous articles and podcasts you've done and interviews. You're somewhat aware of that cult following on Reddit, the fan art that shows like your rhyming progressions over time, the way you say top 10 has changed. How would you describe that overall evolution as a broadcaster? Not you've talked about how you got your start and really putting that work in,
Sure.
but how's it changed also since you went viral, so to speak?
So no, you're right. It's a good question, and I think the thing is, I never intended it for it to be this. You probably heard me tell the story. This was all we had bad editing equipment at the NBA, and I had to say top 10 before the video ended, or we'd have to do the whole thing over again. And we're doing this at 3 or 4 in the morning. So I'm seeing the last few frames of the video, and I just say top 10 as fast as I can. So I do that a few times, and all of a sudden, one of our producers, I think it was a guy, either a guy named Mike Moore or a guy named Ryan Thomas, said, "Hey, look at these comments. They're loving the way you're saying top 10. We didn't know it. It wasn't planned. It wasn't a thing, but it became a thing." And so we rode that, and like the views on the highlights started going up, 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 and up. And it's been great for my career. It really has been. I can't thank the fans enough. Like, how often are you an announcer that generally people seem to enjoy? And I'm sure there's people out there that just hate me, but for the most part, I do pretty well on the internet, and that's not normal in today's world. So I feel very lucky. I feel really lucky, and I enjoy it. And I'm just going to take this ride and go with it as long as they'll let me.
Look, anybody who's hating on it probably just needs to turn the TV off. They've watched either too much basketball or not enough basketball. It's one or the other. You can't not hear your voice. And
Well,
I don't know if fans stop you in the hallway, but they can definitely hear your smile through the action.
yeah, people definitely recognize my voice, and if you watched NBA TV years ago, you'd recognize my face. But I think what it is I try to make, there's so many stats, there's so many numbers, there's so much involved, and it should be involved with the game of basketball. I want to give fans a scoop of basketball ice cream at the end of the night. That's my objective with the top 10. I want people to love it. I want people to have fun with it. I want people to enjoy it. That's all it is. So if that joy of basketball comes across, in the top 10, then I have done my job.
Right. And most people will think, oh, you talk about all the work that goes into it. You tell a fan at the bar what you do for a living. Even me, I go from the kitchen to the press box and back and forth, but it's still, oh, you have the greatest job in the world. There's still a lot of hard work that goes into it and things they don't know about, stuff like that, that really goes underappreciated.
Oh, I agree. I mean, I think people don't, people see the end product, right? There's a lot of work that gets you to that end product. It's not simple, it's not easy. And look, there's two ways of looking at it. There's the work we do every day when I'm reading articles, when I'm talking to folks about storylines and stuff like that, and when I'm going over all the stuff that we've produced to make sure it's accurate and correct so that we get it out to the world in a way that we want to be, accurate and correct, like I said. There's that work. But then there's the years and the years and the years of improving. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm confident now. I'm confident as heck. I know when I get a highlight, I'm going to nail it. I know it. But that's not arrogance. That's work. That's years and years and years of work. And so I don't worry about calling a highlight. I know I can do that. But I also know that in 2002, if well, they did stick me on the air. They stuck me on TBS, and I was calling baseball highlights, and it wasn't as easy for me. I can do it in my sleep now, but it's still like, it's not something you would do in your sleep because you got to be sharp, you got to be aware. And so I like I said, I never take any of this for granted.
Right. And do you have a personal top 10?
A personal
Like,
top 10, like my
like
favorite
calls you
top 10
remember? Like,
calls.
yeah, like
I will
when you
tell
hit
you,
a
yeah.
rhyme and you just know you got gold.
Yeah, there's a couple. But I will say this. I always go back. There was one top 10 that I called that I think sent this whole thing in motion. It was actually a top five in the playoffs. And it was the Atlanta Hawks. Uh, they were the number 8 seed. And they were playing whoever in the playoffs. And I don't know why, but Mike Scott had this dunk that was the dagger dunk in the game. And I just remember in that moment thinking about a Jay-Z rhyme. And so I said, 8 seeds are psycho. They're liable to go Michael, take your pick. Jackson, Tyson, Mike Scott, game 6. And it was game 6, Mike Scott, dagger dunk in traffic. And so I do it. And I know, like, when you do something well, you know it. So I knew it was good. But I walked out. We used to have this voiceover booth. And I walked out of the booth right into the NBATV newsroom, and people were like outside their booth, like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, yeah, yeah." It was one of those moments, and I knew, and so like we saw the comments that night, and we knew, like, okay, that was a corner turning, and obviously the Reddit stuff and everything else like that. I did some George Michael and a David Bowie tribute, and that got picked up by Deadspin. All that stuff was successful. But for me, in that moment, I knew, okay, we got something here. We can ride this thing, and we can make something of it. And so that was a big moment for me.
There you go. So you're in Cali, but you definitely got them East Coast culture vibes with the music. Maybe even
Sure.
Pac over Biggie. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Let's say that. Let's say that. That's a West Coast thing, but yeah, let's say that. That's a,
There you
that's
go.
a
There you
fight
go.
I don't want to start. That's a fight I do not want to start,
Yeah, that's why I hit both sides. You like both sides. You got,
though. That's one of
but
those things for my generation. That was a fight. Yeah, maybe not so much.
right.
Nobody cares about it anymore.
Yeah, well, now it's all the Jordan, LeBron, Kobe, and I love the answer. It's like, nope, I'm just not going to rank them. There's no point in ranking them, right? There's no point in
Uh,
trying to divide your loyalties and what they all brought to you and your love for the game. There's no point in
I've
ranking them.
got it. I will tell you what I say to everyone, and I think this is the ultimate judgment on that discussion. And it's just 2 sentences. Jordan flew higher, LeBron flew farther. Pick your poison. Michael Jordan was better at his peak. LeBron's peak lasted longer. Pick your poison. I don't care. I think young people, particularly, like I've said this a lot, is if you're a young person and you never saw Michael Jordan play, why the heck wouldn't you think LeBron's the greatest of all time? Why wouldn't you? This is the guy you've experienced. This is the guy you've seen. So if you're 18 and you're like, yeah, LeBron's the greatest of all time, I'm like, okay, I understand that perspective. I get it. I really do. So yeah, I have no problem with that at all.
Right. I've seen Jordan. I actually got to watch Jordan live in the 90s. I believe it was 96. He come down here and played the Cleveland Cavaliers in New Orleans. I'm a
Yeah.
little kid trying to touch the court, so I could say I was on the same court. But with those two, I'm Jordan over LeBron. I agree with your longevity thing for him. But Kobe, I think, when you put him in that mix, he did it in a way that he exposed his soul in a way that he just related to you, more like an
Kobe
Iverson.
Kobe is a heart and soul guy for a lot of people.
Right.
Kobe is a really, and obviously the tragedy that took his life and everything like that. We understand that, and I think there was a story out about it today. Byron Scott was talking about it, like how like if Kobe hadn't died, maybe he'd be in that GOAT conversation too. Uh, you know, Look, it's that's a lot of personal feelings. Basketball's entertainment, and it's where your passion hits you and stuff like that. I think. Look, I'll be genuinely honest with you here. I think it's going to end up being Michael Jordan. I mean, I think people just going to recognize Michael Jordan as the GOAT. I think, but because every time somebody gets compared, it's not like Kobe's getting compared to LeBron. It's Kobe's getting compared to Jordan. LeBron's getting compared to Jordan. Magic's getting compared to Jordan. Kareem's getting compared to. There's one guy. It's one guy that they're always talking about. So I think it's always going to be MJ. But if you're a young fan, have at it. If it's LeBron, like there are people that'll even tell you Steph's the GOAT. That's a little different for me. I mean, I don't think that's possible, but I think he's great. And I will tell you this: I think Steph is one of, and perhaps the greatest pioneer and agents of change this game has ever seen. His particular skill, and people get upset when you call him the greatest shooter of all time. He is. He's the greatest shooter of all time. He's much more than that, but he is that. I think that changed the trajectory of the sport. It came along at a time when rules were changing, and it allowed him to maximize his impact. But yeah, I think boy, Steph has been great for my career, and I enjoy it. And funnily enough, the high school that he graduated from, I attended that school in Charlotte too. So I always have a special connection and cheer for Steph Curry.
Right. And I think he's going to be up there on the Mount Rushmore. There would be a wing for him in the Hall of Fame, maybe if they had to
Yeah,
expand it. But in a
yeah,
way that Shaq changed the game. Like literally, there's been players talk about he changed the backboards and the rims. They're going to add another curve for Curry for a 4-point play. If they
yeah,
ever add it, it should be called the Curry curve. He's changed the game that much.
yeah. No, I mean he's just, and still to this day, he's clearly the best shooter. He's clearly the best shooter. It's remarkable that one guy has developed a skill that exceeds everyone else's. And I'm not just saying, percentage wise, there's going to be somebody better that's going to take open shots and, may not be as guarded. Steph can have three guys draped all over him, get just a fraction of a ray of light and shoot it through that window, and somehow he makes it. It's amazing, amazing, amazing to watch. So I love it. It's entertaining for me.
You there?
Yeah, can you not hear me?
There you go. It glitched out for a second.
Oh,
No,
okay,
we
okay,
caught all that audio in just for
okay.
a second. No, Curry, I think for the next 5 to 10 years, ask anybody who really knows ball. 10 seconds left, shot for your life. Who do you want to take it? As long as they're still saying Curry, he's still the greatest shooter on the planet.
Yeah, I
Somebody
think
might
that's
give him the
true.
volume. And that's just how I see it. As long as you're saying Curry, it doesn't matter about volume and efficiency and all those things where people are trying to nitpick. If it's for your life and you want Curry taking that championship shot, he's still the greatest shooter on the planet.
He's the guy for me. He's the guy, no question about it. And I always thought like growing up, Larry Bird would be the greatest shooter ever. It's Steph Curry. But he's just lapped the field. He's not even close between him and Larry Bird. He's passed him by a million miles. It's incredible.
Yeah. It's getting to the point where it's not even a debate. But on that end, we've talked about your origin story, some of the back catalog of the NBA history here. Before I let you go, maybe thoughts on your FIBA action. Do you think Canada's going to pull it off? And then on the season, any big shakeups like a Dame trade before tip off and opening night? And will the same players be in the mix come playoff time? I'm saying Atlanta, Orlando, Charlotte will all be in the mix. This is SouthCoast Swish, so I'm looking at just the South Coast there. Memphis,
Understood.
Miami, New Orleans. They'll be in it, but I don't expect much out of Houston.
Houston's a year or two away. I think they're gathering talent, though. I think they're going to be good in a few years. They're going to be a real challenge for a lot of teams. The funny thing that if you took us back a year ago, right now, people would say, if you said Denver, they would say, yeah, Denver's a great regular season team, and Jokic wins, the regular season MVP and all, but they can't get it done in the playoffs. They can't prove it in the playoffs. And to me, health is a large part of that. The healthiest teams in the NBA playoffs tend to win NBA championships. So I look at a team like New Orleans. If New Orleans is suddenly healthy, like really healthy, and they go through a string of just an incredibly healthy year, what can't they do? What really, our predictions are based on the fact that we're like, well, Zion's going to miss 45 games and Brandon Ingram will miss 25 games. And who knows who will be where and how they'll be feeling and stuff like that. But if they're amazingly healthy, what's to stop them? I think we tend to view and sort of label players and teams by past performance, and that's fair. But I think you have to wonder, if healthy, what these teams can do. I don't know about the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, obviously they've changed it up a little bit there. I'm not sure that they have the ceiling some of these other teams do. Memphis is a lot just to tackle with the situation with Ja Morant and what they can do without him, what they can do with him. Does he grow up? Does he learn from this thing? Because the last time he didn't. So hopefully this changes this time. But honestly, like if you look at those Southern teams in Orlando, you mentioned Orlando. God, they're fascinating too, because that's a team that's maybe a year or two ahead of Houston in their rebuild. But boy, they've got a ton of talent. But as far as if everybody plays their best and is perfectly healthy this year among those Southern teams, I think New Orleans is the best team, and I think they can. I don't know how much of a cap I would put on them. Let's say Denver picks up an injury or two, and whoever else, Golden State or the Lakers or whoever picks up an injury or two, and New Orleans is perfectly healthy, who's going to stop them? That's the sort of, and I will tell you this too. That's the sort of thinking that comes to your mind after doing this for a million years, right? Like it really is. Like you just realize how these things sort of play out. And so I wouldn't be shocked if New Orleans had a great year, but it's all health dependent for them.
Right. And look at all those other stars in the West. Steph, KD, they're getting old. You never know. Dame's even getting up there in years. And I've said this about New Orleans. Brandon Ingram and Zion can both miss 10 games fine. 20 games is pushing it. It depends on which 20. 30 games is borderline playing again. And it doesn't matter which games. At that point, you're reaching a threshold where you have to ask questions.
If they miss 10 games each, and they get a home court advantage in the playoffs, and they're perfectly healthy throughout the playoffs. Imagine if you set those as the parameters for every prediction about New Orleans this year. Imagine how much they would change, because the predictions are all based on, well, Zion's going to come into camp out of shape. He's going to miss a lot of games. No, but that's my point. Is like there's going to be these general predictions about them that are, if he's in great shape, which you're saying he is, and I trust you're on the ground there. And Brandon Ingram comes back sharp and can get some rest in and can be really poised and ready for March and April and maybe May and maybe June. I just don't know, man. I've always, I've seen this happen so many times. And that's why I bring up the Denver example, because just last year they said, well, Denver can't get it done in the playoffs. They're great. They can do it in the regular season, but they're not going to be healthy enough. They can't stay together. They can't prove it in the playoffs. Now they just stormtrooped everybody. I mean, they just killed everybody. And now you're like, well, who the heck can beat Denver if they're healthy? A lot of teams can if they're healthy. Health is such a big factor. I mean, look at Golden State's championship. If Chris Middleton doesn't get hurt, Milwaukee's a real issue. If Giannis doesn't get hurt this year, it's probably Denver and Milwaukee in the finals. I mean, like the other side of that is Miami just, shot 150% from three in the playoffs early going. So if you make everything, all bets are off. But I say all this to say that nothing's done. You give this an open mind as you look at these teams and imagine them having very good health, and then you can do a better job of prognosticating a best case scenario.
Right, and I'm with you on the rankings and looking at Memphis and the rest of these Southern teams. And I would say the same. Going back to the Curry metaphor, how he would be the person you bet on, and we want to take that shot
Yeah,
for your life. I would love to bet on Curry making a shot anytime and every time he tries to make a shot. I'd hate to be the person betting against a healthy Zion, Bi, Trey Murphy, CJ. I would hate to be betting on the other end of that. That
look
scares me
at
too
look
much.
at Zion's numbers when he's really healthy for a long period of time. He's dominant. He's absolutely dominant. And ideally, you learn something when you're sitting on the sidelines. You get a little bit smarter as a player. So if he picks up that intelligence to go with a run of health and maybe a chip on his shoulder, I want to prove some people wrong. Look out for Zion Williamson. Look out for this guy. He's proved people wrong before. I'd love to see him do it again.
Yeah, I would too. I would too. Before we get there, though, we still got to go through training camp. We got the WNBA action, which you'll be on the playoffs. So if you want to touch on that for a minute, I know we're going on
I
a half an hour. We can let you get out of here, but you got to touch on these women that are out here putting on a great show for us every night.
I really wish, and I thought about saying this the other night, but every time you tweet about the WNBA, people are lose their minds. I really thought that if people wanted to get interested or give it a real fair shot, watch a Las Vegas Aces versus New York Liberty game. These are the two superstar teams. This is Cleveland going against Golden State from 7-8 years ago. And it's just two dominating, great, spectacular teams loaded with talent that want to crunch each other. And New York's been going on a bit of a roll lately. The Aces have the best record in the league, but I think the Liberty may have their number in an individual matchup in the playoffs. So I don't want to count anybody out, but it does have a bit of that. Cleveland, Golden State, we'll see you guys in the finals and we'll see how it shakes out. It does have a bit of that feeling. Connecticut may have something to say about that, but man, I'm excited about it. And it's a lot of fun to watch those games. So again, if it's what I used to say about Nikola Jokic before he won a championship, you got to give him a shot. You got to watch him with your own eyes and really check it out. And if you watch an Aces versus Liberty game and you say that's not for me, fair enough. You gave it an honest shot. But I think that's the shot you ought to give it if you're going to give it a shot.
Right, and I hate to say it for the Connecticut Sun fans, but I'm really hoping they do not spoil that party in the finals. And don't even. I hope they even get taken out earlier in the playoffs so they don't body up New York before they get to the Aces. You know what I mean? I really want to see those two teams put on the best showcase of women basketball we might have seen since the league started. This could be the greatest finals ever for them.
I mean, it really could be. It really could. Well, they set a ratings record of some sort in their last regular season matchup, which was 4 or 5 days ago. I called the highlight, and the Liberty got them. And so I've been noticing that the Liberty keep getting them of late. Las Vegas must have had their number early on because the season series in the note I received is now even. But boy, New York has been on them lately. So it's going to be fun to watch and see how that plays out. Maybe Las Vegas is holding something back. That maybe they are. Maybe they got a few things that they've got that they don't want to show New York before the season ends. And they get to that finals matchup, but I'm excited about it. It'll be a lot of fun calling those highlights.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to listen to you call those highlights. Fun watching the games. Hope to get to see you somewhere on the beat this year on in an NBA gym. Again, we're going on half hour. What's on the horizon for you? What can hoops fans and prospects look forward to this season as far as Beau Estes and where they're going to find you in game?
Beau Estes is going to be right back where you want Beau Estes, calling those highlights, calling those NBA top tens. I just signed a new deal with Turner Sports, so I'm going to be around for a while doing these highlights, and I'm excited and overjoyed to be. Man, look, I'll be real honest with you. I am a guy whose dreams have come true. That's me, really me. So every day that keeps happening, I don't forget how lucky I am. I don't. I realize it and I work for it. And so I do take it very seriously. But my job, as I see it, is to spread the love of the game, and I'm going to do that for the next year. You can count on that.
Hey, I love to hear it. Fans love to hear it. I'm sure they do. There's no haters out there. I don't know where that would come from. That is just nonsense. Uh, Again, great half hour, Beau. Thank you so much for coming on, helping this South Coast Swish podcast really jump off in the first few weeks. It means the world to me.
You know, I expect big things of you. And for those of you that watch this podcast, you need to know that Chris Dodson made a little bit of history at SBC. He is the first guy ever to get a job during SBC. Chris got contacted by the Golden State Warriors and did work for the Golden State Warriors during SBC. So I'm really proud of you. And I expect big things from you. Just don't take my job too soon, okay?
No, I'm not coming for that. I do have to get a Pods jersey because now my nephew heard I interviewed him for the Warriors, and now he's stuck on that. He might be coming off of the Josh Hart jersey, but the FIBA, the Team USA one, still hasn't hit the mailbox for him. So hopefully it'll hit before Team USA and Canada reaches in that final game. Hope I get to touch base with you before then. You got the new contract. Next time you're in New Orleans, we'll find a place to get the meal, spend it right.
Thank you so much, buddy. I look forward to it.
South Coast Swish.
You were either all the way in or you were all the way out. And there is no in between.
Like, this South got something to say. That's all I got to say.